Boom, hello, and welcome to the Protector Nation podcast, a podcast that is dedicated to making the world a better place, making the world a safer place by making good people dangerous. In this podcast, we're going to study and understand what it takes to protect your family, to protect your loved ones, because we all know that you have a few basic needs, food, water, and shelter, but you also have the need to protect those things. In a world and society where evil runs rampant and is sometimes left unchecked, learning how to protect yourselves and your loved ones is becoming more and more important. And so we strive to raise the level of accountability to those who would do evil on this planet by making sure that the sheep, that the flock, is more well-versed in protecting themselves and their loved ones. If that sounds interesting to you, then sit back and enjoy the show. Out.
Boom! Yo, what's going on, you guys? Byron Rodgers here, hanging with another special guest today to help good people become more willing, capable, and prepared to protect themselves and their families. I've got the man, Tim Larkin, here with me today. How you doing, brother?
Really good, Brian. Good to see you, man.
Outstanding. It's always an honor when I can, this podcast has been a great excuse to cross paths with gentlemen like yourself you've been in the game doing this stuff for a long time. So thanks so much for your time and the contribution, to the Denver.
Oh yeah, of course.
Awesome, man. So I guess we'll jump right into it. Who are you at your core, brother?
It's funny. I used to think that I was a guy that would teach people. My goal was to teach people the system that I teach, meaning up to instructor and beyond, if you want to do that. I think we all kind of start out that way. And I quickly realized if you're going to be dealing with the general public, that represents a really small part of your group. And really what I focused on since 9/11 is just understanding that the vast majority of people really have no idea what to do when it comes to their own self-protection, and that they don't necessarily want to do what we do. I mean, the group, most of the people who be motivated watching this podcast and everything probably are training, probably have gone out there and did it. But you actually represent a very small part of the general public. But the general public's very concerned about, how to protect themselves, how to minimize the chance of violence coming into their life. And when I switched my focus to handle those people, you realize it was really rewarding. So my things changed. Listen, I've done all the military and law enforcement, fantastic. All the units that exist and don't exist, all that stuff is great. But I expect those guys to do well. What's really rewarding for me, and I didn't really understand it until right after 9/11, when you have a doctor who is going in to do a surgery and gets attacked, in the parking lot, and is able to protect himself and go in and perform the surgery and literally save somebody's life, which happened, to me one time. That blew away anything I got from any of my military or law enforcement guys. And they've done some heroic stuff, but again, they put themselves in the arena. What's more rewarding is when somebody who never should experience violence was able to take methods or principles that you put out and protect themselves in the most unlikely of circumstances. I mean, if you looked at both sides, you would think, oh my God, this guy has no chance.
Right.
And, your training makes a difference. So it's changed over the years. I kind of went from more of a hardcore, I don't want to train civilians, I only want to train the real guys, to, now I still do that. In fact, we just did it last weekend with a group. But what's interesting is I think the general public, I think we're in a really strange time right now. Obviously, we can easily say that, but I don't think our information, this industry's information, has ever been more needed. And I like to be one of the voices that's doing that.
Awesome. Yeah, man, I couldn't agree more. Violence is kind of spilling out into people's lives that I don't think ever expected it. We've always known it always could, because we live that lifestyle. But people just driving home and running into roadblocks and things that are taking place in their neighborhoods while they're trying to stay in their homes or their businesses. I think this is a very crucial time for America. That's, I'm glad to join in with the Protector Nation and the things you're doing, man. I originally was exposed to your brand through your book, When Violence is the Answer. Oh. And as a protector, man, if I could make that book into like a meal and force every civilian I know to eat it and stand over and be like, you need this information. That's what I would have done. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that was a beautiful piece of work.
It's funny too, because, violence, using the term violence,
It's a buzzword.
it hurt my, like, it kept me off of bestseller lists and all that kind of stuff. People just are very uncomfortable with the term. And that's specifically why I used it, because I think when you use imprecise terms like fight, fights are a really dodgy term, because, you can fight with your buddy, you can fight with your boss, you can fight with your wife, and those things all mean different things. But when we say violence, we all understand, okay, this is where the physical plane's been crossed. And, what do I do? Because there's very little good information about that, situation. What do you do when you're facing literally even grievous bodily harm? Had you a choice, you would talk your way out of it. Didn't do that. You can't leave now. It's going to happen. And usually when we get to that point, it used to be that people would always say, well, and I'm talking law enforcement, military operators too, when they get to that level of the force continuum or the rules of engagement, when you got to, weapons free, officers able to fight, or operators able to fight for their life. Yeah. They would basically say, do whatever it takes, ... Yeah. So when you need the most specific information, in the most extreme circumstances, there's very little good information. And I always found it interesting because, somebody like yourself, it resonates with new people, people new to the subject. What was really rewarding was guys like you and other guys that reached out to me and just said, man, you just put it in a way that really made a lot of sense. And I'm going to use that. And I encourage everybody. I mean, listen, none of us have a patent on violence. It's as old as, it's as old as, human race. We all have different ways of expressing it. And if my communication style or my principles and the way I talk about it is helpful to somebody, great. Cause I can't wait to see what people do with where we're at right now with, I have one more book that's going to be coming out in another year. And that's probably going to be my last, my last information on that subject. Yeah, that's probably going to be it. And then what's interesting about that and what's exciting about that is I want to see what the next generation is going to do with that information. Where are they going to take it, Because I've had a great career and I'm not retiring or anything yet right now. But what's interesting is I think we have a lot of great young guys coming up who are eager to, take over and keep charging forward, helping people out. So, if I can be a small part of getting them to think differently about the subject, that's great. And I really appreciate the feedback that you just gave me on that, because it's nice to hear that.
Heck yeah, man, 100%. And you've produced, the book just struck a chord to the core of me as a protector. And I was like, people need to know about this. I was like, there's certain guys out there, I see their work and I'm like, this needs to get out to them. People need to know about this. You have an immense body of work. You've got a lot of different things that are out there online that we'll probably get into towards the end, but you've created like a little world for people to really dive into, which I love seeing that too. So that's awesome. The part everyone dreads, that, background, man, let them know exactly who you are, what you've done. It's a lot. So I'm gonna let you go ahead and break it down for folks.
Yeah. I'm going to really try to give you the Reader's Digest version, because it led to what I was doing. Basically, just, I was a Navy kid. My dad was an officer in the Navy, moved all around. One of the last bases that we lived on was Coronado, California. My dad took over a ship across the bay there. And that's when I was introduced to this concept, these crazy guys called frogmen and, SEALs. And we're like, what? Who are these guys? I literally, when you looked out my backyard, there was this highway, the Silver Strand Highway, and right across the street in the fence, barbed wire fence, there was the Buds obstacle course. And I was introduced to it. I just turned 12 years old. Yeah. And that was what I saw, and back then it was really interesting because it was, early 80s, that part of the community was really not talked about. And I didn't even know it existed, even though I had lived in Norfolk, Virginia. The base there in Little Creek, because my dad was in the amphibious Navy, but I didn't even know about the SEAL teams then. Of course, I was littler back then, but at 12, I found out there's this whole other, organization within the Navy that I knew nothing about. And as a kid, you couldn't believe you got paid to do stuff like that. Right. So anyways, I made it my life's goal. That was it. I was doing that. My dad just said, hey, listen, all I care about is that I want you to go in as an officer. So I want you to get a scholarship. So I did. I got an ROTC scholarship, went to school, went up. I had 25 back then. And the reason I set that up is it was looked down upon, especially if you were a scholarship or an academy guy in the military. It was looked down upon for you to go and choose special warfare, the SEAL teams, because back then it was big push. We were in the Cold War, and it was all about the nuclear navy. It was all about being a submarine or a fighter pilot or operating surface warfare on nukes. I was highly discouraged, and there were 2,500 applicants that qualified for 2 slots my year as an officer. I went through, I won't give the whole story, but I basically did everything I could to ensure that I gave it my best shot, to include flying to Washington, pretending I had to be there, and just showing up at the guy that makes the decision, the detailer. I sat in his office for 3 days before he talked to me. Gave me 5 minutes, and I told him, "Hey, sir, all I know is that I just want you to know I'll never quit. I'll never quit. If you, I know you got a hard choice to make. I know we all look that way." And I figured that's it. That's all I can do. And he looked at me and he goes, "That's it, midshipman," because that was my rank back then. I was a midshipman. And he goes, that's what you came here to tell me? And I go, "Yes, sir." He goes, "Well, geez, don't waste any more of my time. I'll see you later." Boom. And I'm like, "Oh man, I thought I blew it." Walking down the Navy Hall, and this is huge bureaucratic building. And I'm walking down this lonely, nasty hall. And one of the young officers that was in there, he was actually waiting to go to training. He was a JG, and he ran down after me. And he goes, "Midshipman." And I pulled over. He goes, "I just want you to know, you had it on the first day." He goes, "We just wanted to see how long you'd stick around."
Oh, and man, the games begin.
So that was it, And
what a
and
story.
I tell that. Well, so I get in, and I fly through training. I was just, and it wasn't fair because since 12 years old, I knew everything about training.
You were studying.
I had SEAL buddies that were there. They tell me where to hide food, what to do. I mean, I was cold water, from day one. So
inoculated.
But I was pretty arrogant about it, back then. And towards the end, we had already selected. I did every hard evolution. We had about 3 weeks left, and I had a dive, like a no big deal dive. And I was congested. I went down. I blew my ears. And here I was, and I was already going to the hot team. I was going back then. It was SEAL. If any of you guys have been watching Narcos, it was SEAL Team 4 that was doing South America back then, and that was the only action that was going on. And I got the slot to SEAL Team 4 as an officer, so I was totally excited.
Yeah,
all went up in flames when I went down. I was dumb. I did this congested dive, and the only reason I did it is typical young guy.
Yeah.
The reason I did that was because I didn't want to give up my weekend. I'd have to make a dive on the weekend. And, hey, we finally got weekends. There were girls. There was beer. Out there.
Yeah. I would have did the same thing.
I knew when the corpsmen, when they pulled me up, when I blew my ears, and I won't go into the whole detail, but basically I went into vertigo. I lost all sensation of direction. I was able to pull myself up. The only reason I knew I was okay was because it was a tow line. And as I'm pulling myself up, it felt like I was going 45 degrees down because you lose all sense of direction. So it was really weird. They said when my head hit the surface, I was slapping uncontrollably, blood coming out of my ears. I knew as soon as the corpsman who was in the boat with us looked in my ears, I knew I was done. Now, the reason that's interesting, the reason that's key to what we're talking about right now is because that was my first introduction to true injury to the human body. To where no matter, I couldn't gut it out. I couldn't, I couldn't do anything. I was incapacitated. And to me, I thought it was the absolute destruction of my career, and I was done. It literally, it's the turning point to where, yes, I didn't get to be an operator. They kept me in as an intelligence officer. They trained me up for special warfare intelligence. I got to work an amazing career with the Admiral. But that's where my relationship with injury to the human body and how it's basically when you're facing imminent grievous bodily harm, it truly is the Rosetta Stone to self-protection. The threshold to use injury is extremely high. I mean, you would never. This is not something you would just casually do. You know how men sometimes we communicate with violence, knocking each other around, and that can have problems too. But when you're going for direct injury to the human body, there's nothing. There's nothing social about it. There's nothing acceptable about it. It's just necessary if you're facing that. And so that's kind of how I got into it. when I was in that group, they assigned me to a command I had no business being part of. I was a super junior guy with no experience.
Yeah.
And they put me in this command. It was a Naval Special Warfare Command, and the admiral headed it up. It was brand new. We were literally in trailers, when it started, because they were building a facility in Coronado. But I was surrounded literally at that time by the legends of the SEAL teams. I mean, these guys were amazing. And the wall was coming down. The wall came down. The Berlin Wall came down. And I know for a lot of the listeners, especially the younger people, they probably don't understand the significance of that. But when it came down, everybody knew, hey, guess what? There's no more Cold War. There's no more huge Russian wave. We've got our potential enemies and our potential actions have completely changed now. They predicted back then, like Bosnia Herzegovina, they were doing that, and they realized that the training that we had to deal with the Soviet threat was inadequate for what we were going to face. And I remember one of the Master Chiefs looked at me at one point, because they were talking about, hey, we got to start looking at more seriously at hand to hand, because we're going to start putting hands on people again. They predicted a lot of the tribalism that went on all of a sudden, how Europe exploded. And then they predicted basically what was going to happen, what we saw for the last 20 years over in the sandbox. But it's great. As a young officer, to hear all this, I thought these guys were like, oh, come on, it's not going to be that bad.
Scuttlebutt, just talking.
It was amazing. It was amazing. Those guys already were thinking, hey, we got to change our methods now. Our methods have to meet the new threat. Mm-hmm. And so they started looking at hand to hand again. They hadn't really looked at it since Vietnam era back then. Yeah. And what was interesting was they invited me to be part of it, not because I had any special training. Yes, I had multiple black belts as a kid, but they liked me. Number one, I was younger, and I could be a really good meat puppet for them. They just knocked me around. And stuff
you're durable.
I just want everybody to understand, I was not brought in for any expertise that I had. It was just because, they appreciated the work I did and what I did, and they wanted part of it.
Awesome.
What was really interesting was we brought in all these guys from all over, and we brought in some big names, now you got to remember also, this is pre-UFC. So the first UFC had not happened yet. Yeah. The Gracies were training. So some of the guys were training with the Gracies. But what was interesting is that a lot of amazing combat athletes came in and helped us out. But what didn't translate oftentimes was when you had to wear your kit, And the protocols that we put down were at that time, we said, hey, listen, we want to make these assumptions that the operator is going to be probably minimum 60 days in country, sleep schedules all over the place, probably mildly dehydrated. Right. Any athletic ability that they came in with is probably severely compromised at this point.
Right.
And the only thing you can count on is you can count on their body weight, and you can count on whatever kit they're carrying. And you have to be able to operate within those parameters. And that was fascinating. Because very few traditional combat sports or martial arts could translate to that. Not because they're bad, they're just not designed to do that particular type of thing.
Yeah, you're at your peak, you've been conditioned,
And back then, it was laughed at, believe it or not, hand to hand. And again, this is pre-UFC. They were like I had a lot of buddies. The one thing I did in my intelligence job was I liaisoned with everybody. And I got to meet, incredible people. And I had a lot of buddies at DEA. And one of my DEA buddies in San Diego calls me up, and he goes, hey, man, do you guys cuss?
Whatever you want.
Okay, okay. I just want to be respectful of it. But he goes, hey, he calls me up. He goes, hey man, you guys still doing that punchy kicky shit? And and I go, yeah, asshole, we are. So we're still doing it. He goes, hey, well, listen. He goes, we just got trained by this guy. He goes, he's literally in Pacific Beach, which is now when he says Pacific Beach, this guy ended up. Now we're bringing people in from all over. This guy literally lived 2 blocks away from my apartment, like his studio.
This is
I'm like, what? He goes, seriously. He goes, I said, they go, he's a real asshole, but you get along with assholes. He goes, so you should, you should
be great.
And now I've taken that as a compliment because, I just want to be really clear. I have found the people that have the best information are usually, they don't suffer fools.
Yeah, they're eccentric. They're like,
well, and back then, this is pre-war. It's a little bit different now with the Spec Ops community, but I've noticed even in the Spec Ops community during peacetime, true warriors were like hands off, and people that it's almost like, break glass in case of war type stuff.
Yeah.
Those guys I always got along with, and I was able to extrapolate really good information with them. And that's kind of what he meant by that. Well, this guy was no exception. I went down there to look at a studio, and I swear to God, I would not have come back to the studio because it was this dingy 900 square foot. It didn't even have mats. It had carpet.
Oh, man.
And I didn't see any training. I didn't see any training going on because it was closed at the time. And I'm like, there's no way. Because listen, you got to understand.
The right place.
Well, not only that, but not only that, you got to understand. I am the most junior guy on this program. I'm only there because they invited me.
Yeah.
And, I go, I don't want to come off like some arrogant guy. Like, hey, I got the guy, he's there. So I was able to think of that. I go, I thought maybe my buddy in DEA was screwing with me. Mm-hmm. But there was a little trifold that was taped to the inside of the glass.
Okay.
And I went up and I started reading it. And the thing that got me was this guy was a Vietnam vet, but not only was he a Vietnam vet, he was in 173rd Charlie Company of the 173rd, Airborne Unit. Yeah. Those guys, that was Westmoreland, the general at that time. It was almost like his experimental troops. He kept them out in the jungle. They saw tons of combat. This guy in particular was a tunnel rat. He would go in and do that. So those two things said, you know what, I'm going to make the time to come back. And so I come back, I sit in there, and I kind of have modified grooming standards because I'm representing the admiral in a lot of different things. And sometimes we had to look civilian.
Okay.
So I blended in. I kind of looked like a surfer. I didn't say anything about being in the military or anything. And I just went and sat in the back, and I watched these kids who were out there, and they had gis on, like traditional, gis on, but like a yellow belt. I remember this one kid in particular who ended up being a really good friend of mine, still one of my instructors that works with us. He had a yellow belt on, and the first thing I saw him do, a guy came at him, he strikes him in the side neck, comb grabs his hair, knees him to the groin, and then as the guy's coming down to the groin reaction, a knife comes out of nowhere, a rubber knife, but it comes over nowhere. And he just starts, stabbing the guy, taking him down. And I'm like, I grew up, my family's from Boston, and my great uncles were Boston cops. And I was used to, my uncles would fight at the drop of a hat, but that type of violence is very different. I tell a story that my uncle one time, I'm coming out of he's getting a haircut. Yeah. And he's got the whole thing. He got the shave, the haircut, the whole deal. And he was dressed in a nice suit. He wasn't a gangster or anything. He actually, was in real estate. And, but my uncle was a tough guy. And he comes out and this kid's lying on his Cadillac.
No.
He's a punk. He's a punk. Yeah, just
being a
punk. Punk Irish kids, a couple punk Irish kids were there laying on it. And he said, and my uncle's kind of calm. He goes, hey, it's my car. Could you get off it? And they're like, what are you going to do about it, old man?
And you're like,
before the guy even gets another word out, my uncle had hit him, took his head, bounced it off of the front of the car.
Bumper there,
Bumper, yeah. He said, boom, 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 drops him, kicks him twice. The other kid takes off running. Jeez. Gets me in the back of the car. He drives away. He looks back at me. He goes, hey, don't tell your mother about this. So when I say this, the reason I say this is because I used to think that was normal. I mean, that's, my grandfather, most other kids are getting taken to the circus. My grandfather, the first thing he got us were boxing gloves, taught us how to box. Yeah. So I was very comfortable with that idea. I realized when traveling around as a Navy kid, I realized, oh, guess what? The rest of the world doesn't do this all the time. This may be unique to my Irish Boston background here. But the reason I say that is because that triggered right away. When I saw this kid do, I go, hey, this isn't, all the stuff I had was very formatic martial arts, mostly Korean at the time, which were great, got a lot of positive things out of it. But this looked like the real violence I had seen on the streets, the stuff I had seen people do. And I said, wow, they're mimicking. I've seen stuff like this before, and it doesn't look anything like what I've been training. So I was amazed by it. And I end up meeting the instructor. I thought he was like the janitor. He comes out, he's got like a big Aloha shirt on. He's like 140 pounds. And he's just kind of looks like a burnout surfer. And he's talking to kids and stuff like that. Well, that was him. That was the guy, and his name was Jerry Peterson. And he was just he saw arcs and angles other people didn't see. He wasn't a formally educated guy, but he understood injury to the human body. When I saw that, I started training with him for about 6 months. And then I was training with the command guys.
Yeah.
We were training 2 to 3 times a week on whatever was going on. And one of the Master Chiefs noticed one day, he goes, "Hey, you've been moving differently. You've been doing things differently. What are you doing?" And I just said, "Oh, I just, I'm doing this stuff." "What stuff are you doing?" I go, "Well, I've been training with this guy." "What guy have you been training with?"
Yeah. He's like, "Give me the answer I'm looking for."
Shit. And I was sitting there going, "Oh my God, I'm this know-nothing knucklehead that they've invited. And I'm going to be embarrassed." Because the other thing that I didn't tell you was this guy hated lifers. He hated people. Like, he was a Vietnam era guy that got drafted. Yeah. And he thought you were a complete idiot if you stayed in the military. Like he had contempt, And I'm like, oh, and in particular, he hates the Navy and he hates the SEALs because he thought they were like glorified in Vietnam, didn't really do the real work. So anyways, I had that to deal with.
We have all our
in the back of my head.
And
I'm just like, oh man,
this is gonna hurt.
Am I going to have to really do this? And so I bring him in, and what people say a lot of things about him. And I agree. I'm not on his Christmas card list anymore. Yes, he's a functioning sociopath, but I will tell you one thing. When you can criticize his personality all you want, you can't say his methods weren't highly effective. And at the time, there was nothing like it. The reason he got in was I brought him in, and literally it was like, we bring him into the skiff. We did the whole thing. And he gives a briefing. These guys tracked right away. They tracked on his bona fides. They checked him out. They got his DD-214. They saw all that stuff. They got in and started giving him some questions. A lot of the Vietnam era guys knew, where they were operating, and there's back and forth. And they actually had pretty good rapport, which I was like, oh, good.
Thank God I'm not.
Oh man, because I begged him. I go, please, don't tell them what you really feel like. I go, just be nice, Well, they had a situation back then. It was then SEAL Team 6. They were that's how everybody knew it, but it was then SEAL Team 6. Yeah. They had done a shipboarding about 4 years prior, and I had a couple of guys that were there from that unit. And when they got on the ship, they were going through a hatch. And so that, it's typical lineup, typical stack up that came in. They're going in to get the bad guys. First guy goes through, lead guy goes through the door. Second guy gets jammed up. He gets jammed up, and, a bad guy grabs him and is monkeying with him and blocking the rest of the team from getting in. And the other guy's fighting for his life inside, in there. They eventually worked it out, but they were saying like, hey, that was the first question they gave him. Yeah. And before they finished it, and you got to understand, he hadn't done anything since Vietnam there. So it's about probably 15 years. He wasn't up to date on the latest weapons or any of that kind of stuff. He could care less about it. He saw the arc thing. He stacked up all these guys, and I'm talking hardcore dudes. He stacked them up. He comes in, as the second guy comes through the door, they jam him just like the way he was. And Jerry looks at the guy who's jammed, and he goes, "Drop back, sit down." Guy drops back, sits down. The guy goes forward, pulling the weapon. It was an MP5, goes center line, right on the guy. And you can see, okay, they would have killed this guy. And the door opened right away, and the rest of the guys got in just like that.
Man,
that's what got us into the teams. It wasn't punching and kicking or anything like that. It was literally that. And that's why those guys perked up right away. Because that was the missing element. Nobody was able to clearly at that, and we're talking 80, 88, 89. At that point, there was nobody in the community that was having those conversations, and this guy just easily could do it. And that's what started the program. And then, we did it for years. We worked, I became an instructor in the military, and then I left the military and continued as a contractor with that company. And he and I worked together right till before 9/11. And he just had a break off. And then I thought I was out of the business at that point. And, I was still doing work, but a lot of people started contacting me saying, hey,
there's a void here.
He's not responding to our calls. He's not doing seminars. Can you just start setting some things up? And I tried to keep it under the original name. He didn't want me to do that. So that's when I came with Target Focus Training. What was interesting was I never saw myself as the guy. And in fact, I still feel that way. I feel like I'm the biggest cheerleader for this methodology. but not the guru stuff. I mean, I take what we do really seriously. I just don't take myself seriously. You know, I think there's a little bit too much of that in this world.
It really is 100%.
So, but I'm very passionate about getting this specific information out, you know, which has nothing to do with a lot of other things that other people are awesome at training. You know, I've limited myself to this narrow window that I find fascinating. So when we started doing this in the military, in military and law enforcement, what was really interesting was I quickly found out that the more highly trained somebody is in the use of justified lethal force, the incidences of, it's like with the police, the incidences of excessive use of force, or in the military, trying to quote unquote pressure test things out at the bars and getting themselves in trouble, all that went away. What was really cool, when you focus on injury to the human body and you go into the areas that we're talking about, you realize even at the training speeds that we do it, and we can get them pretty good. You can ramp somebody up pretty quick. I mean, you start out slow and accurate, but you can get pretty good. You realize that if you're taking an injury to the pathological limit with somebody, they learn right away. Oh, this works.
This will, that would suck. Like that would suck.
So it's really interesting in the fact that the training was cooperative, not competitive. Meaning, I'm going to allow you to use my body, and you're going to be able to go into the most vulnerable areas of my body because I
don't even like to let you.
Exactly. And I trust you. I trust that you're going to allow me to do the same thing, and I'm going to do my best to model what the injury looks like, so that you have this pattern. And what was fascinating about it was guys that were like we had this happen in the SEAL teams. There was one individual, and he was known as the hand-to-hand guy. He's a very good kickboxer, very good, fighter, quote unquote. Well, we had another guy that was just he was a random chief, really hadn't done anything in boxing, hand-to-hand, anything like that. We trained him up. And the thing that got into was they were at a bar, and I'm just going to completely, destroy what I just said. But they were at a bar, and of course it was over a woman. And the hand-to-hand guru expert started coming at him. And this guy this kid gets knocked back a couple of times. And then he said, he goes, Tim, all I remember was Jerry just saying, if you can't think of anything else, just backhand punch kick. And Jerry, we did these drills where guys would just tear through people, hitting targets on the human body. He beat the crap out of this guy. And everybody knew. And what's interesting is with that, no, I'm not glorifying this, but what I'm trying to say is the interesting thing about injury to the human body is it's a great equalizer. None of us can handle injury to the human body. So had it been a competition, had that been like a formal kickboxing competition or anything like that, we all know how that would have turned out.
Right.
But what was really cool was I learned that, destruction as a skill set is available to everybody. Ooh. And if you train destruction, you can. I have people in their late 70s. I think the oldest gentleman that got back to me so far is 81 years old that used this. And again, what we train people to do with injury and destruction is the idea that a predator gives you an opportunity. They have not injured you. They you can still think and move, and they've brought themselves close enough to you because they do not fear you. And they don't realize that they've just given you this huge opportunity. And if I teach people how to exploit that opportunity, there's a good chance they're going to be able to save their own lives. And that to me was fascinating. And it's humbling too, because I tell people all the time, hey man, I truly am. I'm a master close combat instructor. I've trained just about everybody you have heard of and haven't heard of. I've had a great career. But if I walk out that door and somebody hits me with a pipe to the back of the head, I go down just like everybody else.
Yeah.
Violence is only good if you're the one using the tool. And that's a hard thing for people to understand.
Yeah.
But once you accept it, it's truly freedom.
Changes the game. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's kind of how I got into this. I hope that covered it enough for you.
Yeah, no, that was great. And that was a journey. That was good stuff. So, man, and you were talking about, you mentioned in there different types of violence and really the difference between injury and the difference between just hurting someone when it comes
Right.
to combat, man. And I think this is so significant, and especially for civilians that don't really understand, like, yeah, you might have a baton or you might have some inanimate object that you're going to try to use, or, but when it really comes down to force on force, mortal combat, the person that can really wound or incapacitate the other person first wins. But would you mind just going into that a little bit more? Just open their minds up to the reality of that.
Yeah, we define injury to the human body as a decrement of function, and that's it. Meaning, I could care less whether the person feels pain,
right?
Because pain is just an arbiter. It's horrible. Everybody has different levels,
and you can fight through.
So some people, you bend their finger back and they'll capitulate. Other guys, you can break all 5 of their fingers and they'll keep coming at you.
They're bringing it. Yeah,
it's not really. Now he won't be able to grab, with that hand, but there's still other things. What you really have, when your life's on the line, you want to make sure that objectively what you've done to the human body, say if a radiologist looked at it, he said, I don't care what this guy's feeling, that's not going to work. Yeah. That's there. And that's the goal behind it. And so with injury, you're either going after either the structure of the human body or a sensory system of the human body, and you're shutting it down. You're either shutting it down temporarily for while you're in the engagement, or it can be permanent damage, meaning you could strike somebody to the solar plexus, get a really great result out of that, but all things being equal, as long as the person doesn't have, pre-existing conditions, they're going to recover from that. They'll be fine. Whereas that same strike to, say, the throat, you're going to crush the cartilage and you're going to asphyxiate the person within, 3 to 5 minutes if he doesn't get medical attention. So the idea with injury is what you want to do is you want to put enough trauma in the human body that you trigger an autonomic reflex, a spinal reflex reaction. And all that is we've all experienced it. If you touch a hot surface, your hand immediately comes off. It's not like you keep it on the stove and go, oh, wow, it's burning my hand, I better pull it off. Meaning the brain doesn't consciously do that. What happens is body goes into action. There's afferent and efferent nervous system gives stimulus. And when the stimulus is great enough, it overrides the brain. As the stimulus is coming up the spine to tell the brain what's going on, another immediately gets sent down saying, hey, get that off it now. And you come off. Now, during that time of you're reacting to the trauma, your brain is out of the equation, meaning no matter what you want to do, you have to respond to that trauma. And so what we did early on, this is like the big thing that changed up when we were training operators, was the idea of injury to the human body takes the other person's ability out of question. You're not competing anymore, because you don't want to find out how good somebody is, because they will show you. I don't want any of my people to compete.
We don't want to fight. We want to stop the fight.
and I got to be clear on this too, because I live in Vegas. I have tons of buddies literally that not only work for the UFC. I know a lot of the fighters, the friends of
their ecosystem.
Man, nobody is a bigger combat sport fan than me. I love it. It's awesome. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands. It's just combat sport has a very different goal. And the idea behind combat sport, last time I looked at the rules, there were 31 rules to the UFC. 27 of those rules prohibited, direct injury to the human body. Right. So the only way you can gamify violence, which is what, those contests are, is if you take out direct injury.
It's safe enough. Yeah.
Well, because it has no place.
Yeah.
It really has no place. My goal is not to maim, cripple, or kill my opponent. I want to better him with my skill set, and I want him to be able to compete again, and the end of it. And it's interesting, like where I had my training facility here in Vegas, I was right across from the top MMA gym my buddy owned. And I used to go there. They had a great workout place. They had a great, training place in addition to, training MMA. So I'd go there, I'd lift, I'd hang out with the guys, I'd do some training. And man, it was the most positive place. They played incredible music. You got to watch these world-class athletes training for a fight coming up. They were so positively like helping each other out, picking each other up, bro hugging each other. It was cool. It was awesome. It's exactly what you'd expect out of a sport, Yeah. If you went across the street to my place and we had a training going on, there's no music. It's silent. Nobody's talking to anybody. It's just, a body would hit the ground every so often. And that's it, because that's the idea. There's there's social, which we all are extremely comfortable with. And then there's the asocial, which is the predator's world.
Yes.
And if I can if I can delineate for my clients the difference between asocial aggression, not violence. Sometimes people say it's two types of violence. It's not. It's aggression, where people are just rude to you. You're seeing a lot of it right now because the political storms are so heated. People are doing stuff after being cooped up as long as we've been cooped up, and then you put on all of the issues with, you've got the George Floyd situation, you've got the, now the rioting,
the COVID situation,
people in COVID, everybody's just the Tinder.
You can't have an opinion without being part of a gang. This is just what I think. I'm not here to fight you.
Exactly. You
so
cannot
charge, man.
It's crazy. Stuff is being politicized that never should be politicized.
Yeah, can we just talk about this? You don't have to hate me.
And what's interesting is now it's a very challenging time for people, because now my training, people are calling me all the time going, so glad I had your training, because man, I so want to respond to this guy. I so want to do it, but I'm not going to do it, because the problem is, okay, it's antisocial aggression. It's eminently avoidable. Now, your ego may they take a hit. Yeah. You may do. I tell a story. I went to pick up my son when he was 10 years old. My older son is 25 now. Sweet. And I was down in San Diego, and I was doing a course down there, and that's where my son lived. And he was going to go hang out with my brother for a day. My brother sails America's Cup. And at the end of the day, we were all going to go to lunch after I was done with my son, to dinner after my seminar. So I pick him up at his mom's house, and I'm driving away, and nothing's happening. Guy coming down, barreling down as I pull out, almost hits us, and just keeps going. And he's all pissed at me because, he thinks I deliberately did this to him, and I didn't.
Yeah.
So
he's convinced.
He hits a stoplight. I come up here. My son it's a passenger seat. This guy's over here.
Yeah.
He starts just giving it to me, boom. And at that time, I just got one of my first tattoos during that time. And he goes, "Oh yeah, I like you tattoo. You think I'd kick your ass?" Blah, blah,
and he's
blah,
just
blah.
pushing the buttons. He's trying to find the dang button. Yeah.
And I'm just like, "Hey, sir, sorry, I didn't realize that." My son's sitting here holding the magazine, and he's just looking back and forth at this. And I can't believe this guy's lost it so bad that he sees I have a little child in the car. I haven't been aggressive. I haven't been aggressive to him or anything. And I'm like, "Oh man, something's up." And we're stuck. I can't go. So anyways, he goes and he just takes off. And my son looks at me, "Dad, why didn't you get out of the car? You could have taken him," and stuff like that. I go, "Connor," I go, you might be right. I said, there's a good chance if it had come to that, I could get over there and I could take care of the situation. I go, what if he had a gun? What if I was wrong? What if I did something to him? What if inadvertently I used violence and did that? I'd have to deal with that. And I said, what would that do to us? He goes, "But Dad, you're this guy." And he holds the magazine up. It was my first black belt cover.
Heck yeah.
And so
you're this guy.
Yeah. He goes, "You're this guy." He's a little kid. And it was funny. And that was my opening story for my seminar. I said, "Hey, if you don't think I wasn't raging inside and just wanting to go out and just, especially in front of my kid, and do this," I said, I go, "It took every ounce of restraint for me not to take the bait." I said, "But I had a choice, and that's why, because you had a choice, and it was a painful choice, but I made the right choice, because that wouldn't have passed the 3-day test." And what was the 3-day test? For me, the 3-day test is this, and you have to do this prior to events like this happening. Mm-hmm. Say, okay, if you get triggered, and you're gonna respond to a certain event,
a stimulus.
3 days later, if you find yourself either 6 feet under or sit in a jail cell, are you going to tell yourself you had no choice?
It was righteous, and I did the right thing.
And very, very few things meet that threshold. And that to me is the most important thing. If I tell people, man, you don't ever want to use the tool of violence. You just don't. Mm-hmm. It's not something. It's something you use to survive. Yeah. And when you talk to people about it, the way I try to equate it for new people is I'll usually get in a seminar and I'll ask everybody, "Hey, how many people know how to swim in here?" Yeah. And usually it's a good portion of the class raises their hand. And I say, "Okay, keep your hand up if you've ever had to swim for your life." And I have. I've had 2 situations where I had to swim for my life.
I have too, man.
And those hands keep up. And I go, "Okay, everybody has their hand up that had to swim for their life. Would you ever want to experience that again?"
Heck no. Man, that's a good example.
And it's like, that's violence. That's real violence.
Man, because it's
because if somebody's bragging about, I did that, I kicked this guy's ass, that means they had choice. They chose to respond with a tool of violence, and it worked out okay. They didn't end up killing a guy or something, or getting seriously hurt. So I'm never impressed with the people that brag about it. Usually when you talk to people that had to survive violence and were heroic, I mean, they're amazing. Yeah. You got to draw it out of them, and you can just see they don't ever want to experience that ever again.
And I see that a lot. Well, of course, being in the private security industry, dealing with all the folks we deal with. Well, the first thing I want to mention is what you were talking about with not allowing that other guy to draw you into violence. Yeah. In my opinion, that's strength, man. That's alpha stuff. And I really want people to understand that is discretion. That is strength. Being able to really be sober-minded enough to be able to make an intelligent decision under the stress of the situation, and let your ego take some shots, but know why you're doing what you're doing. That's real strength and discretion. And truly strong humans exercise that, and it's an internal strength that accompanies that external strength. And that's truly healthy strength, healthy ego. Because you need your ego, but that's healthy ego, So heck yeah, man. And then on the violence thing, being, in private security, you get the tough guys, you get the once upon a time guys, and everybody's like the most special forces, and you hear these guys bragging about stuff, where you get the ones that are like, yeah, man, it's about to go down. And you're like, you don't understand, man. Like, there's a lot of chance in this game we might be about to play. And it's just, when you're fighting for your life, it's like, it's horrible. You know what I mean? Like, until it's over, you're just like, and you're managing and you're moving. And it's like that swim for your life analogy. Yeah. You can get pretty inoculated to it. Yeah, you can. But man, when you come out the other side, you're like, thank God. And your boys are with you, and you're like, okay, we made it. That's a feeling you don't want to have to feel again.
You bring everybody out, and you hope to God that's the last time you got to deal with that,
Deal with that,
right? Because it's there. But it's funny, and people like they romanticize it, and they don't really. I mean, to me, what I try to tell people, violence doesn't solve anything. It just ends it. It ends communication. And so what I try to tell people all the time is that, and if they haven't experienced something like this, if you haven't had an incident where you see somebody who's maybe being aggressive or the, the quote unquote, the bad guy. Yeah. And then they're, a lethal action gets taken against them, and that body's just there. It's not that person anymore. It's not. It's just an inanimate object that all of a sudden all that gets released. It's a very strange thing. So I try to tell people, if you beat up a guy who's an asshole, you don't kill him, but you beat him up, right? Yeah. He's still going to be an asshole. He's just not going to be an asshole around you.
Exactly.
Violence isn't really necessarily a behavior modification. It just ends communication. And so the tool is a really imprecise tool for social change. It's really your last resort, because you're devoid of choice. You had no choice, and understanding that threshold, I think, is one of the greatest things we in the industry can do for our clients, is to give them really clear parameters on when it would ever be thinkable for you to do that. And the juxtaposition on that is, okay, and this is where people drop. Like, a lot of people talk about prevention and all this other stuff and avoidance and stuff. Right. But the reason I did the book the way I did, because the real question is, okay, there's a lot of information on that side. Mm-hmm. What about on this side, when violence is the answer? What do you do? How do you train somebody to do that? So that, to me, is a fascinating question. And then I'm the first one. Oh, once it's time, great. Here's how you tear apart the human body. Here's how we decrement function. Here's how we, and we're going to do it till the person is, incapacitated, meaning they're going to be non-functional. And non-functional for us means that the person is either injured in such a manner that they're no longer a threat, meaning even if they're conscious, they can't manipulate weapons or do anything at that point. They're unconscious or they're dead. That's true. To where you can safely turn your back on that person and they're no longer a threat. Yeah. And then that's where people get jarred up, because they love all my peace and love talk, ahead of time, which I'm not denigrating. I truly, that's truly huge. But also, you can't lie to people on the other side. If it's going to happen, You need real information that gets real results, and you got to give them the best chance. And I haven't found anything better than direct injury to the human body.
Yeah, man,
for that purpose.
Awesome. No, I 100% agree with you. One of the things you were talking about in your book that I love is kind of not knowing what someone else's their rules are,
Right.
I talk about leading with respect, and I talk about how anyone can kill you, and you live your life that way. It's a better life. But would you talk a little bit about, kind of the mindset behind understanding, like, interacting with humans, and as you see something escalating, as you may get plunged into a situation in life nowadays, considerations with regards to people you're interacting with, and all that stuff.
Something that stuck out to me, and really, I try to give a story first so people will kind of. So I'm living in San Diego during those years when I'm a young officer. My brother, when he wasn't sailing, my brother's a big dude. He's way bigger than me, and he was a bouncer at a bar called Jose Murphy's. It was on the strip, right down on Mission Boulevard. Back then it was a biker bar. Every Sunday, the Mongols would roll in, the Hells Angels. It was just, and the bouncers there, these guys they were just monsters. They were amazing. Yeah. One guy, Mike, he's a really good, really good dude. This guy was, he just had a bad day. And it was closing time one night, and they'd already had to kick out a bunch of jerks, and they're little guy. And
he's ready to be home. He's ready to be
he's
drunk people. He's like, I'm over it. Hey, ain't got to go home. Just can't stay here.
Yeah. So he come around once, said, hey, we're finishing up. We're closing. Lights are on him. And this little guy was just sitting there. He's probably like 5'8", about 140 pounds maybe or so, like just a little dude.
Unassuming.
Compared to Mike. Mike was 6'7". He was 300 pounds of pure muscle. The guy was just a monster, and just a physical phenom.
Right.
And this is a guy who's regularly used to beating the crap out of Hell's Angels and stuff, so he's not
like he's inoculated. He understands the game. Yeah.
But he's also, Mike always was one of those guys that, like I said, he on a normal night, this never would have happened to him.
Mm-hmm.
But this guy sitting there just drinking his beer, and Mike says, hey, time to leave. And the guy goes, okay, I'm just going to finish my beer. He goes, no, I already told you to finish your beer. And he just hit his hand out on him.
Yeah.
And the guy ends up going over his bar stool. Okay. And then Mike steps up over him. Now this guy, like I said, is much smaller. He's got this behemoth up above him.
Yeah.
He's standing there. And all of a sudden, we just see him dig something out. And 1, 2, he cut his Achilles. He cut Mike's Achilles, and he went and cut in on the femoral.
Woo!
Right. Here,
so he went all the way.
Got up, and walked right out the door. Super calm.
You finished your beer.
And we didn't know. None of us knew what happened. I was just hanging out with everybody, and I saw it. We watched it, but it was one of those things. It happened so smoothly and so quickly that you saw Mike drop, and you didn't know what happened. Then you saw the blood and everything. Now, luckily, they saved him. They saved him. They were able to get him. Mike was there, but Mike, still to this day, has a limp from that. The Achilles is just that. This guy knew exactly what to do, and what was really interesting was, that was his threshold. You knew nothing about this guy's background.
Man,
obviously that was not the first time he's had to do stuff like that, and he's probably felon. Mm-hmm. We'll never know. But to me, it was like, damn, why be that way? You don't ever want to be that. You never know who you're dealing with. I mean,
right.
To look at the two guys, it would be like, this monster, and then this little
everyone
guy.
Would have been betting on Mike. Everyone would have been like, Mike all day.
Absolutely. And that hit me. I was probably about 22 when I saw that. And that resonated with me. And I, we jokingly say this, but I do mean it. I find it's best when you're operating. Listen, if you're within your group, your tribe of people, your friends, I'm sure you can be jerks with each other, because you have that social understanding of, okay, we're having
depth of relationship and all this stuff.
But we walk out that door, we have no idea who those people are. We have no idea what the background is. We have nothing there. So I operate and I always tell my clients, I said, I try to operate like everybody is 6 seconds away from a shooting spree. And I don't want to be the guy that's going to trigger it.
Right. Know? Yeah.
So I will give everybody that initial respect for that. And it's funny because people always say, God, I met Tim. He's such a nice guy. And unfortunately, folks, it's a strategy. It's a survival strategy, man.
It is a social engineering. And I'm the same way, man. 100%. Lead with respect, disarm everyone. Everywhere I go, my smile is probably my best weapon,
Absolutely.
Bring the tension down and just, because you just never know who anybody is in the zoo. That guy with the pocket protector and all the pins at work might come in and shoot the place up one day. And I want to be like, I was always cool with you, man.
Exactly. And that's so important to have that, keeping your ego in check that way and understanding him. And like I said, Mike just had a bad night in that end, but for me, it was a lifelong lesson. And being nice, like I know you probably feel this too. Like if you come off kind of nice, I know as soon as they start like getting not aggressive with me, but how they how guys say, oh, okay, I can do this to him. They take the shot. I go, I got you.
Yeah.
I know that guy's no problem because he has no idea that if, he thinks I'm this person. That's why I want everybody to think I'm just a nice guy. I don't want anybody to know I've been trained. I don't want anybody to know I know anything until I need it, because I'm the first one to understand it works just as good on me, and I don't want to give anybody a reason to do
or
that.
A chance to prepare, all warfare is built on deception, man. Like
absolutely,
if this is going to happen, I want it to stack everything in my corner, man. That's
and I'm also the other thing too that I'm really with my clients, and people can get a little annoyed when I say this because I'm not putting anybody down, but I think we're doing a big disservice to clients when we do quote unquote civilian clients, when we're doing scenario based training. That's like, okay, so you're at the bar, and I'm like,
okay,
really? Really?
Is everyone at the bar?
Really, you're at the bar. Okay, so we're going to start with alcohol in there, a place that we easily could have left earlier if we see things going sideways.
Yeah.
But you're going to start here on how to bar fighting 101, and the things that can go horribly wrong. Mm-hmm. And what's really interesting, the thing that sunk that into me on that was there was famous video that went out in the early years of the internet, and it was clips from Boz Rutan giving a self-defense video.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Bob, and then
awesome.
Oh, yeah. There it is.
The whole thing, and then you do this, and you just now all that stuff that he showed, highly effective. Like I told people all the time, I go, but the reason, and I show it to clients, I go, why are you laughing? And they're laughing because they realize the context that it was shown in is just a fast track to the prison system. Or dealing with lawyers. I mean, the threshold that he used the violence on was just, it was thug. It was thuggish.
It was street.
And what was really interesting was I heard him in an interview years. I got to meet Boz a couple of times, and he's always been a super nice guy. But I thought this was super telling. He was in an interview. I can't remember. I don't think it was Rogan's podcast, but it was something along those lines. And he's talking about being, I believe it was in Copenhagen. It's either Copenhagen or Amsterdam.
Yeah.
He got in a fight with a couple of Moroccan guys that owned a bar. And he took them out back and he beat this one guy. He took the one guy down. He beat the other guy to the point to where he thought he killed him.
Oh, that's scary.
Yeah, he was covered in blood, and he went back to his hotel room. And he's sitting there, and he goes, he was telling me whoever the interview was, I was sitting there just waiting for the cops. I figured I was done. And he said, probably because it was, a criminal class, they probably didn't report it, and they probably did. But he was beating himself up because he realized it didn't have to happen.
Yeah, man.
And he didn't want to do that. And I thought that was really cool that he told that story. And I've kind of always used that because he's such a funny guy, and those videos are so well known. If you're into self-defense or
you've seen them,
sports, you've seen them. They're classics, Yeah. And so I thought that was really a good thing to tell people because, my message to people is you absolutely should train to protect yourself, but everything should be on the threshold of when you use a firearm, meaning, people ask me all the time, what, Tim, without getting into all the laws and giving people a stack of things to recognize, I said, people go, when would you ever use the training that you have? And I said, well, if you're in a situation where if you had access to a firearm, you would feel justified emptying into threats in front of you. I said, that's when you'd use the type of information that we're putting out, because that's the only place it's not only just legal, it's the only place that's even useful.
The demand is on you for it.
Yeah. And educating people to that point is really cool, because even if they don't train, it makes them much better citizens. There's a behavior modification when people are introduced to true violence.
Yeah.
That they want to avoid it. They want to minimize the chance of it coming in their life. So people make better decisions in their life. They don't put themselves in those positions where potentiality for violence is there, And I think that's a huge thing we can do too to people.
Yeah, I think when you understand it and you're capable of it, it's the romanticism of it is it's like the antibody to the romanticism of it in a lot of ways, and it's much more healthy, and then also your understanding can help you have, and hopefully training can help you have some more consciousness in the event, because I've been through events where I've been like, okay, we're doing damage to this guy, but I don't need to go that far. It looks like he's incapacitated. Now I'm going to stop. This is as far as I need to go. I need to figure out what the other threats are. And there's this consciousness that you can have if you have the right training in these situations. And then you can have more peace with yourself at the end of the altercation when you went just as far as needed to be, as you needed to take it. You dealt with the exact threat, and it wasn't emotional. It wasn't out of control. It's not like, oh, I see red when I get angry. Really?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's where you want to be in a combat situation. You know what I mean? I know it's not actually.
I tell people all the time, because they'll say, oh, am I just going to be this, I'm going to respond with just killing, kill sets and stuff, because they try to pigeonhole me that way too. Like it's just kill. And I laugh and I go, you're not going to do anything that's going to break your moral code. Whatever your moral code is now, the training is not going to violate that. If you're a sociopath, you're a sociopath. Does it work? People are like, does it work great? Does it work well in a bar fight? It works great in a bar fight. It's awesome stuff. It'll work, but is it what you want to do? No. And what's interesting about that is when people understand the threshold, like you said, I had a chiropractor. He was 51 years old at the time we trained him. 3 weeks later, he was coming in and he had a small pharmacy he was a chiropractor, but his partner was like a DO or something. And so they had drugs there. And he came in on a Sunday to do some paperwork, saw a guy breaking into the little pharmacy that they had. When he entered in an angle where he didn't have an exit. It wasn't, he came around, he literally was in a funnel.
You're going to have to earn his way out.
This guy recognized him. And what was interesting was, here's a guy who literally had never had a fight in his life. And he recognized immediately. They locked eyes. The guy started to try to run at him, but to grab at something. Yeah. And he comes towards him. He's running towards him. This guy runs toward him. They get into a doorway.
Yeah.
He hits the guy the side of the neck. The chiropractor hits him to the side of the neck, grabs his head, and just repeatedly hits 2 to 3 times into the door jamb. It was a steel door jamb. Boom, boom. And then he notices the guy just drops.
Okay.
And that's when that's where the next thing, he probably would have stomped him. He probably would have stomped on his throat, did something if he felt it was still necessary at that point. What was interesting was he recognized non-functional. Mm-hmm. And it kind of like the story you just told, meaning it's done. I don't need to go. This guy's no longer a threat. And that's out there. You don't just do some automatic movement, but you understand, because you're very familiar with what it should look like, what it does. Like, we didn't teach him, comb grab the hair and slam into the door jam. He understood, hey, opportunity, here's something really harder than me that I can use. I know where to jam his head, to knock it down. I can get this done. And that was basically it. Nothing sexy about it, but it worked highly effective for what he's trying. So that's the other thing people need to understand. Studying violence does not make you violent.
Right.
It absolutely. And like I was telling you before, like the justified use, justified lethal force reduced incidences with law enforcement and military units of either excessive use of force or inappropriate use of violence off duty. So it's there, and I know it's a juxtaposition. It's a hard thing for civilians that aren't, around this kind of stuff to think that. They think people are just naturally violent if you are training this stuff all the time. And it's like, no, not at all.
No, actually, you're more peaceful. You're more peaceful, actually.
Byron. Yeah. You probably run into guys who like their credentials are amazing, and they're usually the nicest guys.
They're the nicest really cool guys, the most legit guys, man.
Yeah, no ego, nothing. I mean, I laugh all the time.
Easy going. They're just like, okay, cool.
People say to me all the time, they go, well, they'll mention some guy who's like big in the media or something, and they'll be like, what do you think of this guy or whatever? I'm like, I go, if he's acting that way, I go, it's either an act or it's something else. I said, because the real dudes don't do that. They're not like that. They're super squared away. I laugh all the time.
If you didn't know, you probably wouldn't know. Like you'd run into him at Home Depot or some social event, you'd have no idea until someone was like, "Do you know who that is?" And you're like, really?
both of us are like bigger guys and stuff. And so I have clients come in, oh my God, looking like you. I go, are you kidding? Me? I go, I'm the first one to go. I'll be the first one they shoot. I said, no, I go, I don't get scared when I see guys like me. I said, if any of this deters people, you're not the person I'm worried
about combat. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The guys I know, they're nondescript. They're anywhere from like 5, like 5'5" to maybe 5'9", anywhere from 140 to about 170 pounds.
Yeah,
nondescript. I see a group of those guys walking in with their duffel bags. I'm out of there, man. Cool, I know. I do not want to be around.
That's the truth. That's funny. Let's see. What would you say about and when you study violence, you can, like you just said, you can recognize people that are most fit for violence as well, which is another protection tool. What would you say would be the hardest lessons you've learned in the field, teaching or training or just out there?
Most people don't want to train for violence.
Okay.
Even though it's the skill set that we all as humans need, meaning we all need it. People want to, they have an idea of it. A lot of them want to train for competition. I think that's why, like the military, it's funny. There's a famous trainer, you probably know the name, Rex Applegate. And he was World War II. He was the guy, he wrote Kill or Be Killed, which is one of the classics, in military hand-to-hand combat. And he was amazing. He was one of those guys that taught all the guys at the OSS that went overseas and stuff, and pretty brutal stuff. I mean, the training's improved since then, but I tell people to read Kill or Be Killed all the time just because of the terminology. He's a very blunt talk about, violence. We try to, I mean, my stuff's pretty, I try to make it as direct as possible, but back then they could actually talk about real violence, and he was bemoaning the fact that military hand-to-hand had turned to more of a competition-based esprit de corps approach rather than being part of your combat training, and that, he just thought at that time, he thought the Marines were the only ones that were kind of taking it seriously, which, the Marines are fantastic. Oh man. I'll tell you, as a Navy kid, I grew up, man, the freaking Marines stepped up every time for us. Our dads would be gone. They coached our little league. They helped us out. Awesome. I worked out at MCRD. My thing with the Marine Corps, I love those guys, and they're always cool. And to hear that. And it was the coolest thing because, especially with kids when their dads are deployed and stuff, you're looking for positive role models. And I got to say, the Marines were just fantastic that way. And they always made you feel welcome, even if you're a Navy kid.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what people what people don't understand is there's no payoff. There's no reward for being good at violence. It's not like you're getting do we have an instructor system where you can go up? Yeah, but it's not because you're winning competitions. It's because, hey, you're progressing in the system, you're doing very well, and you're very good at passing on the information. But there's no payoff. Whereas, hey, I got a black belt in my jujitsu, I'm there. That's a huge accomplishment. It really is. And it's very positive in there. Yeah. Violence, you don't listen, when you're destroying parts of the human body so they don't work anymore, you're not bettering somebody with skills that are not going to leave the person permanently damaged. You're doing things to somebody that they probably, if they survive it, will never be the same. And the threshold for using that type of information has to be huge. And quite honestly, most people aren't comfortable training all the time in it. I mean, I put 30 years into that type of training. I feel very comfortable with it. But like I said, it's a very small group of people. Now for me, it's not because I enjoy the violence part of it. I enjoy, it's a challenge. The subject's a challenge. I think it's a part of society that, your self-protection is your, it's one of your rights. It's something we all have the right to protect ourselves, and I think so many people have abdicated that right to first responders who are fantastic, but they're probably not going to be there when we need them. And you're responsible for yourself.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think people are realizing that, like I said, man, you need food, water, shelter, but you need to know how to protect your trash, yourself, your loved ones. With all these gun sales being, going down now, people are starting to wake up, and it's great, but it's also scary. It's a very interesting thing, man. I think, like, even hearing you talk, I'm terribly interested in studying, the target focus system. And I think for me, I see violence as a tool to empower me as a protector, And I'm a professional protector, but that's why I say protector by nature and by trade. Everybody who hears this thing's got people they need to protect, or they got themselves that they need to protect. I feel like I want people to realize this is a crucial skill for being, I think, a healthy, formidable, capable human, and being able to be a good steward with the stuff you got, It's not for everybody, because there's some that are they're just internally configured differently. But if you have that thing in you that you're drawn towards these things, it's not because you're evil. You get to decide whether you're good or evil on a daily basis. Once you become powerful, make that decision, whatever. That's your ethos and your character. But this is I think it has something to do with maybe you're a protector, but either way, be able, learn to be able, What would you say would be, we were on the hardest lesson you learned in the field, and that was that people tend to shy away from being able to stomach or want to even train violence.
Right.
And I think that's something that, it's really important to understand, because when it happens to you, you don't want to be a fish out of water. But what would you say would be your proudest moments in the field?
Proudest for me was when I started getting feedback from people kind of along the same thing. And it's interesting. It's mostly comes from the people that have, whatever maybe it was a 2-day seminar.
Yeah.
They came through, and that's it. That's all they want. They were exposed to it. It was in there. But what they'll do is they'll call me up, and I think I said it earlier. You get this call that said, "Hey, before I got exposed to this information, this situation happened. I would have done this, and now because I don't want this to come in my life, I have a different behavior. I mean, I call it sleeping with your head in the railroad track. A lot of people don't know that they're sleeping with their head on a railroad track by their behavior, and the risks they may be taking. And by exposing them to the information, they realize that, geez, all I got to do is take my head off the railroad track, and then it doesn't matter if the train comes, because it's not going to affect me. And that's the coolest thing for me is the feedback of getting that from somebody who said, "Hey, I have no interest in training like you train all the time, but man, that information made a huge difference in my life, because I avoided something that I would have unwittingly gone forward with that probably could have got me killed or really grievously hurt." And to me, I think that's the biggest thing. I think if we as an industry can tell people that, hey, we would love you to train, and there's that opportunity. And you do need to have some basic understandings of violence and how it operates. But the payoff for you is the fact that you're going to inoculate yourself from 99% of the avoidable stuff that's out there.
Yeah, you're going to be able to see through the matrix, man, and you're going to be able to move and get your people out.
Exactly. Yeah, and to me, that's rewarding, because I had the whole ego stuff when I first said, "Oh my God, I'm going to have to go train this unit." I mean, my mic drop moment was I was in Prague, Czechoslovakia, at a huge convention of these amazing business entrepreneurs from all over the world that had speakers, and I was given my presentation in this group, and obviously, we were training, and everybody's training there. And I knew some of the guys that I saw there that we were attending, because there were a lot of heavy hitters at this. We had like King of Jordan, all these other people.
Yeah.
So this one gentleman comes up to me after, and he said, I just want you to know that was the finest presentation on hand-to-hand combat I've ever seen. And he was at the time the head of MI6.
Whoa!
And so when you essentially have M come up to you and just like, boom, done.
You're like,
2000. I could have stopped at 2002.
Right. Be telling them, yeah, wow.
Yeah, but it was cool, So I'd had a lot of experiences like that over the years where people, were affected and they liked the material that came out. What you'll find also too, and especially if you're training, the methodology that I'm training, justified lethal force, you'll find that a lot of people are supportive of you and they like it, but they're really uncomfortable. Like I got people that just, it's hands off. And it's like, I don't want to train, but I really like you. Yeah, exactly. and I learned to respect it because people will tell me like somebody, you probably had this, you probably had a really cool client who comes in, they love the training, and they go, I'm going to tell all my friends I'm going to get you 40 people. I go, no, you're not. You're not. You might get one other person that might want to do this. I said, trust me, man. I've been doing this for years. In all the years I've been doing it, I have had 0 family members take it on a basic course. 0. And I've had 2 friends that took it to instructor. But that's me. That's with me. Like if you're a friend of mine, I'm going to extend this to you. But so either it resonates with you or it doesn't.
And that's kind of what I was trying to get at. Yeah.
It's really weird. But what I have found is learning the ins and outs of violence and how it operates is extremely valuable to everyone.
Yeah, it's never a bad idea.
You can always share that, But if you judge everything by how many people want to continue training with you, you're going to be sorely disappointed. It's just not that big.
It's very interesting. Yeah, man. That's, I think, kind of with that Protector Nation concept. And it's an honor to be able to have you as one of our subject matter experts. We roll that out, man. I'm looking forward to that.
That'll be fun.
It's going to be awesome. I think that's what I'm finding is that we've been protecting each other since the beginning of time, and there's like a demographic in every nation in the world of people who want to be protectors. We're going to tap into that, and we're going to help train and influence those people positively. Give them the tools they need to succeed, man. Yeah. I think that's a great life's work, for me at least, and for us, to join forces. You've been doing it already, but for me, that was some water to get into, What would you say about just a few other works that you've done? And then we get into the closing questions. So target focus training is, we talked about that a little bit, and we talked about When Violence is the Answer. Love that book, How to Survive the Most Critical 5 Seconds of Your Life, Surviving the Unthinkable. What would you say about those pieces of work? And then anything else that you've got going on?
Surviving the Unthinkable was a game changer for me. It was my first formally published, truly, industry published book. I did it with Riddell back then, and it all came out of a relationship that I had with Tony Robbins. He out of the blue.
I love me some Tony Robbins, man.
Well, that's what's up. He out of the blue became a client. It was weird. I didn't realize we had a mutual friend, and Tony's the kind of guy that I'll just say this, and you can probably appreciate this. I avoid celebrities like the plague.
And
that's not everybody.
I understand what you're saying.
But normally they basically want a guy to hold mitts, and like hang out with and stuff like that. They never want to train in a group or anything. So I make it pretty difficult for people to do that. Tony came to me. He had a real situation that he was concerned about, especially with his wife. And so he ends up training with me around his 50th birthday. So he just turned 60. So we've been friends for 10 years. Yeah. And he trained with me. Now, I made it hard for him. I said, listen, I don't know if I told you, my wife is a captain with Las Vegas Metro.
Oh, wow.
And she was, back then, she was at the academy, and I was training a bunch of undercover narcs in this class. And so imagine guys that it looks like a cross between, all the characters in Sons of Anarchy.
Dudes,
they're all there, and these guys all were good. And I throw Tony in with them. And he says, yes, he'll do this. I go, well, if you want to, you can do this. I go,
hang out with the boys.
You're going to have to work with other human beings, and do it. And I expect him to say no. And shit, he says yes. I'm like,
And you're like, oh crap.
I got to train them,
Yeah.
So I tell the guys, hey, listen, somebody's going to join training. I said, you're probably going to know who he is. I said, but no bullshit. Just we're going to do the work.
Yeah.
So we go through the work, and I got to say, I have not had this experience. I probably had it with one other celebrity. Tony was amazing. No ego. Sat there. If he asked a question, it was pertinent. It was in there. He worked with all the guys. He didn't do the Tony, he didn't do the Tony Robbins thing.
Yeah.
And it was great. And he really helped, with that. And he got it. And I was like, The thing that stuck it for me with him though was at the end of the class. Now, again, imagine all these hardcore looking dudes, right? Yeah. And Tony says, hey, Tim, he goes, I really appreciate it. He goes, can I just thank these guys for allowing me to crash in their class? I think that was really cool. I said, yeah, Tony, go ahead. Byron, you wouldn't believe it. All of a sudden, these guys, they're holding his hand. You don't understand. You're the reason I'm a cop. Blah, blah, blah. And I'm sitting there going, oh, Jesus.
And you're like, right now, guys.
I'm like, seriously.
At least they held it together for the training.
Yeah, but they did. They held it until then. But was really funny was, and the other reason, I'll just say the other thing that really sunk in with Tony is, okay, these guys are cops, right? They don't make a lot of money. So Tony asked them, he goes, have you guys ever gotten any of my course or anything like that? And they're like, well, yeah, I always wanted to, but I just never did. He goes, well, I got one coming up in Long Beach. He goes, it was like a couple weeks away. He goes, just tell Tim. He goes, I'll get you in. And in back of my mind, I'm like, shit. I'm like, well, another celebrity who's bullshitting and
doing this thing.
Not going to do anything. Whatever. So sure enough, because a couple of the guys came up to me and they really wanted to go. They go, hey, Tim, do you think he meant it? And I said, oh, yeah. I'm like, oh, yeah. And I'm sitting in the back of my mind going, well,
never hear from me.
The base ticket for this one, I think it was like Date with Dustin. That was one of his ones. I think it was only like $99 for a basic ticket. So I had told myself in the back of my head, I go, if this asshole doesn't call back, I said, I'm just buying them tickets and I'm going to send them.
I'm just going to fix it. Yeah.
So sure enough, I reach out and Tony goes, dude, he goes, I'm going to have my assistant call you. He goes, if you take care of it, give me the names, everything, boom. And that was it. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I do. I tell the guys, boom. Sure enough, they get tickets and everything. And a couple weeks later, I see the three cops that went. And I go, how was it? And they go, how was it? They go, you didn't hear? And I go, what? He gave them access to the platinum group. Yeah. That alone was a $5,000 ticket. They met people they never would. He never said anything about it. He never was like, oh, I'm going to do this. He just did it. And he took such good care of these guys. And to me, that was like, dude, whatever you need, I'm there. And I train his people all the time. I train his platinum group and he's taking me around the world doing stuff. But
that's awesome.
What came out of that was he told me, he goes, Tim, he goes, women need this information.
Was one. Yeah.
You've got to write something specifically for the women. That was Surviving the Unthinkable. He gave the forward to it. And he also went above and beyond and introduced me to his agent.
Yeah.
And, his book agent. And she told me, and she's pretty big in the industry. And she told me, she goes, I've known Tony for 25 years. He goes, he's never told me I had to meet with somebody. So I had to figure out who the hell you were. That's why I'm taking this meeting. And that's how I started. That's how I started. Because before I had the self-published books and stuff, but that brought me up to a whole new level. And also women, it was really interesting. We went to one of the seminars I was doing for Tony, and it was a couple hundred people in the audience because it's a pretty elite group. They're paying a lot of money. So it's not one of these big, multi-thousands. And so he says to everybody, he goes, listen, I'm not saying anything's actually physically happened to you in the last week. But how many in this audience have seen the potentiality for violence in there? What was interesting was maybe 5-10% of the men, maybe. Yeah. No, very few. 95+% of the women, the hands went up.
Really?
And the reason is women are attuned to, it's always in the back of their mind. The unfamiliar guy gets in the elevator. They're constantly aware of the potentiality for violence, where you and I wouldn't notice a lot of this.
No one's really hunting me generally.
Unless I'm at work. Yeah, and they see that. So that's how the concept. What was cool is to be able to take my information, because the information is the same for men and women. I'll train men and women differently, but damn, you better communicate right with each gender, you know?
Right.
And women, I had to communicate why. And the sad part about women is oftentimes they feel, it's almost like they don't feel like they're worth fighting for their own life, meaning their life is worth protecting. It's this weird thing. Yeah. But if you trigger them, if it's a mom, you say, hey, what happened to your kid? Well, she turns into just a she-wolf.
Goes the extra,
Yeah. And so what I do is I take that back. I go, no. You need that for you. Because look, if this guy disrupts your life, your family doesn't get access to you anymore. No, how dare he?
The fallout's ridiculous.
And so it was really fun, taking the principles, and it was a challenge for me because my female clients, other than operators, were probably, it was never more than five, maybe a big class, 10% would be females.
Right.
This resonated, and I got to meet some high power women and really bring a lot of great information to women on this. And it was really fun. It was really unique. I never would have done it though. I never would have done any of that. Yeah. It was all Tony, introducing me to that and just kind of pushing me and to do that. So I'm always thankful to him for that.
Wow, man. Yeah. That's awesome to hear that about. I went down the Tony Robbins rabbit hole probably about a decade ago and did his strategic interventionist training and all that fun stuff. And it's just helped my life in so many different ways. It's like, it's about psychology and helping people. And it's helped my life. And so being able to deal with all that type of stuff. And it's been great, man. That's awesome. All that's awesome. I'm going to have to consume all those books, man, and get some more people training with you, brother. It's going to be good. 100%. Favorite quote or mantra? They are all leaving your head right now, probably.
Probably, but I actually, it's funny you're saying that because I just saw one the other day.
Yeah.
That hit me. I mean, the one that always is the whole idea of like the Jeff Cooper that good men are if you don't stand up for yourself, basically, I'm paraphrasing it, but if you don't stand up for yourself, nobody else is. It's the idea of you taking responsibility for yourself first. I think was always important when it comes to that, because
and being able to,
and the whole idea, like it's really your human right. I mean, nobody has a right to take away your ability for life, liberty, and happiness.
Yeah, man.
And we seem like we all almost in this day and age we kind of treat stuff like that like a buzzword rather than a God-given right to everybody. Yeah. And this whole idea of, I really hope after this political situation calms down, we get back to being, that we all get back to being one group, working in unison.
Like America.
They're just trying to divide us again. They're just trying to divide, do stuff that it's not what we're about. And if you travel the rest of the world, like I have, you see stuff, we don't realize, listen, we are imperfect and we're constantly, but damn, there's no place else in the world that gives you the ability to do things that this country gives. Even at our worst, we're better than the best of some other places,
100%. And that's why people are crawling all over themselves and walking across the desert and doing all these things to get here because they know the truth, you know?
You talk to anybody that's had to live under that type of a regime or those type of constraints.
Environments, man.
The cool part about it was I just remember, I wish also more people, I really wish, I guess say national service, my experience is the military, because I never saw it in the military. I never thought of gender. I never thought of color. I never thought of, race or anything. And it was my guys. If you were a jerk, you were a jerk. It didn't matter who the hell you were.
Yeah.
Hell,
you're we make fun of everybody equal.
Yeah. I mean, I worked with, I had farm boys. I had guys from the inner city. I had guys, people that had different life experiences than me. Yep. And we all had to work together, man. And we all had to figure it out. And I think our country would be a lot better if we had, like right now, only 3% of our population is even involved with military or national service or anything like that. And I do think that would help unify us a lot more if we got back to that, It doesn't have to be the military, but just, I think, I tell people all the time, like people say, well, what do you think of like the Spartan races or Tough Mudders and stuff? And those are great. Those are fun. But when people say, well, I think I can do like, the military training, I go, no. I go, here's where the military training, it will come in. Your little Spartan team that you're putting together, I'm going to choose your team. And it's going to be random. It's not going to be anybody you know, nor like. I said, plus, I'm going to tell you exactly what you're going to eat. I'm going to tell you when you can eat.
You only have as much sleep as I told you. Yeah.
Oh, and your equipment's going to be what we give you. You don't get any of your whiz bang stuff. And you got to work within those parameters and stuff. And that to me is far more valuable than, you know, and I'm not putting down, listen, those are tough events and everything. Yeah. They're super cool. But what I'm trying to tell people is, the real challenge really isn't the event. The real challenge is throwing a bunch of people from backgrounds that are all over the place and getting them all to work together under conditions that they all have to deal with the same stuff. Yeah, absolutely. People tell me all the time, they go, hey, how come you don't like jump out of planes anymore? Or you do this kind of stuff. I go, because the military squeezes all the fun out of all that.
They do, man. They really do. Like by the time you're a civilian, you're like, I don't want, like I barely get back into camping and stuff.
Exactly.
You know, I'm like,
exactly.
We can do some. They got showers. I'll camp if there's showers there. Yeah.
My wife laughs at me all the time about that. You know,
it's so real, man. No, and that's beauty. It gets back to the humanity of it, man.
Yeah.
You know, like. And I've said it. I'll say it again. I wish everybody in America had to go through like just a 2 year run. You know, just 2 years. Get you some of that stuff, some discipline, some inoculation to stress.
It'll change your life, man. I mean, believe me, nobody likes being told what to do.
Right.
But the idea, there's I forgot who said it, but the idea was, you know, you can't lead if you can't follow. You know, and
so good.
In having to work within rules that oftentimes you may not even agree with, not that they're unethical, but you may not agree that that's the best road, but you still have to do it. It teaches you so much about how to live life, you know,
gosh.
And
life,
invaluable for people.
Heck yeah. And if you can learn to be a good follower, there are some serious perks to being a good number two, taking care of your leader, covering them, making sure they look good, making sure they're healthy, letting them take the credit. They also have the responsibility. Yeah. You can carve out a real good place for yourself, even as a leader, than being a servant leader. Like, these are principles I'd love to see more in our reality. That's good stuff. Another deep question. How would you like to be remembered, brother?
You know, I don't think of myself in those terms. Only because I just, you know, I've seen so many people that I respect that I've read about, you know, people from hundreds of years ago that they're still relevant today, but they're not as relevant. There's some esoteric people that I just think are very interesting in their principles. But what's interesting is the idea they had has survived and it's going on. And all I'm hoping is that some of the work that I've done continues on. That's what I mean. Not continues on with Tim Larkin's name on it, but that methodology, that
body of work,
this idea of injury to the human body being an equalizer, I hope somebody can improve upon it and make it even better. And I'm sure with some of the new technologies coming out, we're going to be able to do some really cool things from a training aspect that'll help accelerate training. But I think, you know, from an industry standpoint, the only thing I'd want to be remembered is kind of, you know, somebody that was really cared about the client, you know, like the client. I've always had a client focus. It doesn't matter how good I am at what I do. I mean, if you came away from a training and you said, "Oh my God, Tim's amazing the way he moves this or does that," I've failed. You know, it's what can I get you to do? You know, because I'm not going to be there when it happens. And hero worshiping an instructor really is useless to you when it comes to your own self-protection. Am I serving my clients? And are they, you know, making better decisions, you know, and that's really the thing. And it's not because I don't have an ego. I absolutely have an ego. I just also have, I just look at, I mean, imagine there are probably some amazing people like, you know, even 200 years ago that we'll never know about. It's just, you know, it's very rare that a name survives, but I'm hoping a methodology. I really hope this methodology will survive. And that's my greatest, hope for the future. So it doesn't answer me specifically, but kind of what I hope.
But that's the
takes
aim.
It out of what my life's work was, you know?
Yeah, that's awesome. That's the aim. That's great, man. I got this Albert Einstein quote I butcher every single time, but essentially he says 100 times a day I remind myself that the life I've been afforded has been bought on the backs of, you know, thousands of men and women over the ages, and basically that I can't die before making my contribution. I just think that's just so beautiful.
That's good stuff. And last two questions. Habit that you think people should bring into their lives that can make them better people or better protectors?
Consistency. And I know it sounds vague, but the number one thing I see from people is they either are too ambitious with their goals and therefore are not consistent.
Okay.
I would rather see somebody progress, the Kiteson approach of incrementally on there. I think that's probably the biggest. Once I learned Kiteson, and I learned it through weightlifting originally, meaning the 2.5 pound weight, and that idea of just you adding 2.5 pounds, and then guys even made 1.5 pounds. These incremental gains that you get without destroying yourself. If I sat there and said, I want to lift 200 pounds, when I can't even lift 100 pounds at that time. And, you're there, but that idea of being patient and incrementally seeing that, I think the problem with a lot of people is especially in this day and age, the attention span is so bad that they don't want to put the time in. Like they want everything quick and fast. They want to hack. They want something there where
shortcut, Google the answer.
There's this weird thing of just, if you're consistently doing something over time, one day,
it compounds.
It just happens.
Yeah.
It just happens. And then it's part of you. It's really you. And to me, I think, getting, if you can, in this day and age, if you can teach yourself to truly focus on subjects, it doesn't have to be for long periods of time. But if you on a regular basis can do some deep thinking and some deep practice, that's probably the greatest gift you can give yourself. Because listen, it's not going to stop. We can complain about our attention spans and the fact that, we got huge technology companies that are just trying to monopolize our attention and are very successful at it. If you can just every so often just rebel against that and actually put some really good deliberate thought into things, your life's going to just really be much more rewarding. And it's a challenge. I tell people all the time. I mean, I think the number one threat right now to everybody's personal security is this thing.
They're
They're
blanking it out right now. They're like, don't show the phone. Don't.
But these things, they monopolize us. They monopolize our sensory system on there, and we go internal, and we're not aware of the rest of the world. I'm not even talking just about situational awareness. People don't understand. I show a video that it's just amazing. It's in Seattle, and it's on a bus. And a guy is walking down with a gun on the bus, and he is literally robbing everybody. They're all stuck on their phones like this, the whole time. And Byron, the craziest thing, he gets to one kid, and the kid has his phone, and the gun's right here. And the kid goes back like this, sees it, actually does a great move. He blades off, he nails the vector, gets it out of the way, passes the gun. He's driving the guy forward, all good stuff, right? And then he has the phone in the other hand. So he has the phone like this.
He's dropping the phone? Yeah.
No, he's going to use it. I'm thinking, oh, cool. He's going to use it as a bludgeon.
Yeah.
He's trying to tuck it into his pocket because now think about what it's crazy. This is how I did a talk at Google, and I said, how the hell am I going to get a hold of the guys at Google when I do this talk? I go, that was the video I showed because they could all relate to it. And I tried to say, this guy had a gun in his face. He's facing, grievous bodily harm. And yet this thing is so persuasive in his life.
Like a family
he's
member.
protecting it. He's literally shoving it into his overcoat as he's going forward with this guy. It's the most fascinating thing I've ever seen. And I try to tell people, I go, that's how powerful these things are. And you have to understand how addictive they are. And you just need to start recognizing these things.
The operant, classical conditioning, all the different mechanisms that are being used on us, man. Yeah, it's something to be aware of, 100%. That's great stuff. This has been a great conversation. It's been an honor to finally get connected. We've been chasing each other around, man. It's an honor. What are you up to these days? Last question. What are you up to these days, and where can people find you?
Crazy. Your Target Focus Training is the main website. Instagram, it's Tim Larkin TFT. I'm on Facebook. You can pretty much find me. If you go to the website and, if you liked what I had, I send out a newsletter that goes out. It's not spamming you. It's not trying. Sure, I'd love for people to buy product, but I'd much rather, if you like the way we were talking about this information, I'd like to give you, some more information and see if, anything's of interest. So that would probably be the best place to check me out. I've done a ton of, like interviews like this over the years. I have a TED Talk and a Google Talk. Those are pretty good. And you'll find it if you just Google me. You'll find all that. But as I always say, Brian, if anybody in your world after seeing this has more questions, I'm more than happy to answer any additional follow-up questions or anything like that for you guys. Because first of all, you're tenacious. Everybody should know you're freaking tenacious because you did not give up on me. And Byron does not take no for an answer. And I didn't say no. We just were missing each other's schedules. So that was cool.
Man. No, it's trying to bring the best, man. Trying to expose the world to all these awesome folks like yourself that I've been, that I see in my world, that I see and that I, follow and pay attention to. It's like, man, good people should understand these things, So by the grace of God, that's my drive, So I think I'm glad it's that, So
that's awesome, man.
Awesome. And I'm looking forward to all the other cool stuff we're gonna do here in the future. So thanks. Thank you.
Appreciate the time.
Yeah, 100%. It's an honor having you, and looking forward to talking soon. And all right, take care. God bless Semper Fi, man. Boom.
You got it, brother.
Boom. Yo, what up? I hope you guys really enjoyed that episode. Hey, listen, in order to get more out of the brand, I want to encourage you to go join us on our social media platforms and join us at protectornation.com. We post different types of content on our different platforms at different times. You'll get blog posts, you'll get videos, you'll get real world combat engagements and things like that. So stay plugged in order to get the most out of the brand. In order to support us, also go to protectornation.com and buy something, or join forces with me on Patreon. You'll scroll down the homepage and you'll see the link. Anything you can give counts. Think about whatever you would lose in your cushions or like spend on McDonald's this month, $5 a month, whatever it is. That helps us make the world a better place by making good people dangerous. Anyways, this is Byron Rodgers, protector by nature and by trade, and I'll see you on the next piece of content, whether it's a video or podcast. Out.